You were not designed to break. You were designed to bend, adapt, and come back sharper. The human brain, your brain, is not a fixed structure. It is an adaptive, ever-evolving organ sculpted by your choices, your focus, and your repeated actions. That means you're not stuck. You're not behind. You're not incapable. You're simply untrained for now. Winning begins long before the finish line. It begins in the space between stimulus and response. That space is where the mind is either mastered or hijacked. And when you train that space, when you own that pause, you begin to rewrite how you engage with challenge, with fear, with chaos. The battlefield is not out there. It's in here. Your nervous system responds to your commands. When pressure rises, your biology prepares to fight, flee, or freeze. But you have a choice. You can use breath, slow it down, ground your system. You can redirect your gaze, literally change where you're looking to change what your brain thinks is important. You can condition your mind to lean in when others step back. That's training. That's how champions are made, not by talent, but by precision repetition in the small moments. Stress, that's not your enemy. Acute stress is your signal. It tells you that the stakes matter. It primes the brain for plasticity, meaning it gives you the opportunity to grow if you engage it correctly. That moment you want to quit, that is neurobiological goal. That's when the training really starts. Don't waste it. See it before you do it. Visualize the win, not as fantasy, but as rehearsal. Your brain doesn't distinguish between vivid imagination and reality. Mental rehearsal lays down the same pathways as action. Walk through it, feel it, then execute. You're not faking it. You're programming it. And let's not ignore the physical vessel. If your brain is the pilot, your body is the ship. Use it. Use it. Cold exposure, controlled breath holds, intense focus followed by rest. These are not trends, they're tools. They train the mind by disciplining the body. They teach you to stay present under pressure and recover when it's time. Dopamine is not just about pleasure. It's about pursuit. It's about pursuit. It is the molecule of motivation. But don't let it own you, direct it. Set goals that stretch you, not break you. Celebrate progress, not just perfection. You don't need more stimulation. You need more meaningful friction. Protect your sleep. Manage your light. Get sunlight in the morning. Wind down at night. Why? Because discipline begins with physiology. You cannot conquer the world if you're in conflict with your own rhythms. And above all, know your purpose. When the goal is aligned with mission, when your effort is connected to something greater than yourself, the mind becomes a weapon of clarity. Distraction dissolves. Pain becomes data. Fear, it becomes fuel. Neuroplasticity is the biological truth that your brain is not fixed. It is changeable, adaptable, and always evolving. Every thought you think, every action you repeat, every emotion you engage with, all of it shapes your brain at the structural and functional level. This isn't a metaphor. It's measurable. Neural pathways are not rigid like steel cables. They are more like clay, malleable, ready to be molded by experience and intention. The implications are profound. Stress, in its essence, is not the villain it's often made out to be. It is, in fact, one of the most powerful biological tools at your disposal, if you understand how to work with it instead of against it. The human nervous system evolved under conditions where survival depended on rapid responses to threat and challenge. Stress is the signal that alerts your brain and body to mobilize resources, sharpen focus, and elevate performance. It prepares you for action, not just physically, but cognitively and emotionally. When you feel stress, your body undergoes a series of precise, intelligent changes. Your heart rate increases to deliver oxygen faster. Your pupils dilate to allow in more light and widen your field of vision. Glucose is released into your bloodstream for quick energy. Your brain's attention narrows, filtering out distractions so you can focus on what matters most. These are not signs of weakness. They are signs of readiness. The issue arises not with stress itself, but with our chronic mismanagement of it and the mistaken belief that stress is something to avoid at all costs. Acute stress that arises in response to a meaningful challenge and then resolves, is one of the most potent drivers of growth. It engages neuroplasticity, enhances learning, and increases memory consolidation. When you're under pressure, your brain releases neuromodulators like norepinephrine and dopamine. These chemicals heighten alertness and motivation. They essentially tag the experience as important, making it more likely your brain will remember what you learned during that time. This is why some of the most formative moments in your life were also the most intense. Your nervous system was imprinting the lesson deeply. But stress must be viewed through the lens of intentional exposure. Just like lifting weights builds physical muscle by stressing the system, placing yourself into controlled, stressful environments builds psychological and neurological strength. A cold shower, a public speaking opportunity, a hard workout, or even a difficult conversation, each of these introduces manageable levels of stress that, when engaged with consciously, make your system more robust. Your ability to tolerate and regulate stress determines the ceiling of your performance in nearly every domain. The key is how you interpret the signal. If you view stress as destructive, your body responds with fear and shutdown. But if you interpret stress as preparation, your biology rising to meet the moment, then your mind shifts into a state of challenge instead of threat. This change in perception is not just mental, it alters your physiology. Studies show that individuals who believe stress is enhancing rather than harmful experience lower inflammation, better focus, and improved outcomes, even under high demand. Your mindset modulates your stress response, and your response determines whether stress sharpens or shatters you. There's also a cyclical intelligence to stress. It operates in peaks and valleys. You're not meant to be in a constant state of high output. Instead, you should cycle between focus, stress-induced effort, and deliberate recovery. Stress followed by rest creates adaptation. Stress without rest leads to breakdown. This principle mirrors the concept of hormesis, where brief, intense exposure to stressors like heat, cold, or fasting creates long-term resilience. And your goal should not be to eliminate stress, but to develop the capacity to recover and come back stronger from it. Moreover, stress reveals what you care about. You don't get stressed over things that are meaningless. That elevated heartbeat, that tension, that focus, they're your system's way of saying this matters. Stress is not a problem, it's a message. Learn to listen to it without panic, engage it without resistance, and use it as a cue to bring your highest faculties online. When you stop running from stress and start training with it, you stop fearing life's challenges and start transforming through them. The brain is a simulation machine. Long before you act, long before you speak or move, your mind runs internal models of the future. Visualization, when done with focus and intensity, activates the very neural circuits required for execution. The motor cortex, premotor areas, even the parts of your brain responsible for timing, spatial awareness, and decision-making, all of them light up during mental rehearsal. This is not imagination for fantasy's sake. It is targeted training. When you visualize with clarity and intention, you prepare your nervous system to act with precision and confidence when the moment arrives. This is why elite performers in sports, business, combat, and even creative fields all rely on some form of mental rehearsal. They see the outcome before they chase it. But it's not just about seeing the highlight reel. It's about walking through every step with presence and awareness. Visualization becomes effective, not when it's used to escape, but when it's used to escape, when it's used in code. You rehearse the pressure, the obstacles, the emotions, and the response. You prepare your mind to recognize the terrain before your body steps into it. The brain begins to treat the imagined experience as a lived one, strengthening the synaptic connections associated with that task. In short, visualization makes your first attempt feel like your second. Mental rehearsal is most effective when it includes multiple senses. It's not enough to see yourself succeeding. You must feel the grip, hear the environment, smell the air, sense the timing. The more embodied the visualization, the more powerful the encoding. This full sensory simulation helps your nervous system distinguish relevant signals from noise when the real situation unfolds. Instead of freezing or overthinking, your body responds with what feels like instinct, but in reality, it's preparation. Even your emotional state can be influenced through visualization. You can practice confidence by simulating moments of doubt and picturing yourself meeting them with calm resolve. You can train for adversity by mentally walking through setbacks and rehearsing how you'll realign and continue forward. You can build grit by repeatedly visualizing yourself taking one more step, one more rep, one more breath, even when everything in you wants to quit. Over time, these internal rehearsals become more than just thoughts. They become patterns, and those patterns become your default behaviors under stress. But visualization alone is not the goal. It is the setup, not the score. The danger lies in confusing mental rehearsal with real-world progress. Visualization must always lead to action. Think of it as preloading the software before you run the program. You're priming your system to act not out of fear or hesitation, but from a place of readiness. Once the visualization is complete, you step into the action with map. You've already made decisions in advance. You've already predicted how it will feel. You've already rehearsed how you'll respond. This reduces cognitive load, allowing you to stay agile and present during execution. Visualization also sharpens your goal-setting process. When you mentally walk through the desired outcome, you begin to notice what's missing. You start asking better questions. What skill needs improvement? What time of day will I train? What will I do when fatigue sets in? Visualization exposes the gaps and forces you to plan for them, turning dreams into strategies and outcomes into systems. The beauty of this process is that it scales. Whether you're preparing for a 10-minute meeting or a 10-year vision, the act of visualizing creates alignment between mind and mission. It builds trust in your future self. When you consistently see yourself stepping into challenges and navigating them with composure, your brain starts believing that narrative. And belief, when wired into the nervous system, is the beginning of real change. So visualize with clarity, then act with conviction. That's how mental rehearsal becomes transformation. Cold exposure and breath work are not just physical practices. They are deliberate tools to strengthen the nervous system and condition the mind to endure discomfort with control and presence. When you step into cold water, your body's response is immediate and primal. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing accelerates, and your mind screams for safety. This is your autonomic nervous system reacting to perceived threat. But here lies the power. You can learn to override that initial reaction, to stay calm within the storm, and to direct your physiological response through conscious control. That process builds willpower at the deepest level. Willpower isn't just about resisting temptation or forcing discipline. It's the ability to stay conscious and directed in moments of internal chaos. Cold exposure puts you into that chaos instantly. It removes comfort. It forces your system into high alert. And it gives you a choice: react blindly or respond deliberately. The moment you control your breathing, relax your muscles, and allow the discomfort to be present without panic, you are training your mind to lead your biology. That's real willpower. Not avoidance of stress, but mastery within it. Breathwork in this context becomes the bridge between the body's panic response and the mind's ability to regain agency. Breath is the only part of the autonomic system that you can consciously control. And when you do, especially under pressure, you send a powerful signal to the brain. We are not in danger, we are in training. This shifts your physiology from sympathetic fight or flight into parasympathetic calm, even while your body is still in the cold. You learn to stay focused when every part of you wants to run. That's not just resilience, that's rewiring. Over time, this practice changes your baseline relationship to stress. You become less reactive. Your threshold for discomfort increases. You stop flinching at difficulty. The same neural circuits that help you stay calm in the cold will help you stay grounded in confrontation, disciplined during fatigue, and clear-headed in moments of emotional volatility. You are teaching your system how to be still in chaos. That skill transfers to everything else. Deliberate cold exposure also increases norepinephrine and dopamine levels in the brain, neurochemicals that are directly associated with alertness, drive, and motivation. The cold forces your brain to activate these chemicals in order to meet the challenge. And when this is done regularly, you raise your baseline level of motivation and your capacity for sustained effort. Cold, when approached intentionally, becomes a form of mental conditioning, not punishment, but precision. The practice says, I choose discomfort now so I can meet future discomfort with strength. And breathwork alone, even outside of cold exposure, has immense capacity to reshape your internal state. Through specific patterns, long exhales to calm, breath holds to increase focus, or rhythmic breathing to energize, you gain a tool that's always available. The breath becomes a lever for shifting your mental state on demand. In moments of overwhelm, your breath is your anchor. In moments of fatigue, your breath is your ignition. The more you practice, the more automatic this control becomes. Willpower is not built by avoiding pressure, but by learning how to stay centered within it. Cold exposure and breathwork allow you to rehearse that state over and over with precision and safety. Each session is a microdose of adversity, and with each repetition, you train your nervous system to meet challenge not with panic, but with power. Engagement, but with power. You are not just tolerating the cold, you are transforming your relationship with discomfort. That transformation is the essence of willpower, staying connected to your mission even when your body and mind want to retreat. And once you train that, nothing external can take it from you. Dopamine is often misunderstood as the chemical of pleasure, but in reality, it's the neurochemical of pursuit, motivation, and goal-directed behavior. It is the molecule that propels you forward, that sharpens your focus on what matters, and that fuels the effort required to move from intention to action. It doesn't simply reward you after success. It motivates you in anticipation of it. When you understand how dopamine works and how to consciously influence its release and balance, you unlock one of the most powerful systems for sustained achievement and personal growth. At its core, dopamine tracks the distance between where you are and what you want to be. It creates the feeling of craving, of wanting, of needing to take action. That desire, that internal pull toward a goal, is dopamine in motion. And when dopamine is released in anticipation of a reward, not just after receiving it, it wires your brain to stay engaged, persistent, and focused. This is how long-term goals become possible, by learning to associate the process with dopamine release, not just the outcome. If you only get dopamine after achievement, motivation collapses during the long, hard road of progress. But if you learn to release dopamine from the pursuit itself, from effort, from discipline, from every small win, you build a mind that doesn't quit. This system is not random. The brain has a tightly regulated circuit known as the mesolimbic dopamine pathway, running from the ventral tegmental area of VTA to regions like the nucleus accumbens and prefrontal cortex. When you visualize a goal, take action toward it, or even think about something meaningful you're working on, this system can become active. The brain begins to release dopamine in proportion to how much value it assigns to the pursuit. This is why your values and your vision must align, because what you care about determines what the brain marks as worthy of effort. You can also modulate dopamine levels through your behavior. Novelty, challenge, and incremental progress all stimulate dopamine release. When you stretch your abilities just beyond your comfort zone, and you succeed even in a small way, the brain gets a hit of dopamine. That chemical signal not only feels good, it marks the experience as important, reinforcing the neural circuits that produced it. This is neuroplasticity, C, in action. The brain learns what behaviors lead to reward and strengthens those pathways. This is how habits are formed and masteries develop, not through willpower alone, but through strategic engagement with the brain's motivational circuitry. But there is a warning here. Dopamine is powerful, and it can be hijacked. Short-term pleasure, scrolling, sugar, drugs, endless stimulation can flood the brain with dopamine artificially, leading to desensitization over time. When dopamine is spiked too often, especially without effort, the baseline level drops. This means the brain starts needing more just to feel normal, and the motivation to pursue meaningful goals begins to erode. The key is to avoid constant, unnatural spikes and instead focus on steady, sustainable dopamine release through real effort, challenge, and intrinsic purpose. You can enhance dopamine function through practices like cold exposure, physical exercise, goal setting, sunlight in the morning, and deep focus. Even simply breaking a big goal into smaller, attainable milestones can help maintain dopamine levels. Every time you achieve one of those steps and recognize it, your brain gets rewarded. That recognition matters, not in a superficial way, but as a neurological signal. This is working, keep going. Achievement is not just a function of talent or luck. It is deeply tied to how well you manage your internal chemistry, especially dopamine. When you understand that this molecule is not about indulgence, but about drive, you begin to use it with discipline. You begin to align your habits, your environment, and your focus with what truly matters. And when you do that, when dopamine is linked to growth, not escape, you develop a mindset that thrives on challenge, commits to the process, and never stops evolving. Sleep and light are two of the most foundational levers for mental performance and resilience, yet they are often overlooked in favor of more dramatic tools. In reality, they shape your ability to focus, regulate emotions, make clear decisions, and maintain motivation over long periods of time. Without sufficient sleep and proper light exposure, your cognitive and emotional systems begin to falter, regardless of how disciplined or driven you think you are. The nervous system cannot function optimally without proper restoration and circadian alignment. If you are serious about building mental fortitude, you must first learn how to optimize these two essential factors. Sleep is not just about rest, it is about neural recalibration. During deep sleep, your brain performs vital processes, clearing out waste products, consolidating memory, balancing hormones, and reinforcing learning. If you are training your mind to become more resilient, focused, and adaptable, sleep is when those gains are cemented. Every time you engage in high-level effort or learning during the day, your brain tags those circuits. At night, particularly during slow wave and REM sleep, it replays and strengthens those pathways. This means that consistent, quality sleep is not passive recovery, it's active brain remodeling. Without it, your ability to grow mentally and emotionally is compromised at the biological level. Deprive yourself of sleep, and it doesn't take long before attention falters, emotional regulation collapses, and motivation fades. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for rational thought, planning, and impulse control, becomes impaired, while the amygdala, the center of fear, stress, and reactivity, this imbalance leads to heightened anxiety, poor decision-making, and an inability to maintain calm in the face of challenge. What you call mental toughness is actually the outcome of a well-regulated brain, and that regulation begins, quite literally, in your sleep cycle. But sleep doesn't exist in isolation. It is controlled by circadian rhythms, internal 24-hour clocks that govern not only when you sleep, but also how alert, focused, and resilient you are throughout the day. And these rhythms are heavily influenced by light exposure, incellular exposure. Specifically, exposure to bright, natural light in the early part of the day is one of the most powerful ways to anchor your circadian rhythm. When your eyes detect sunlight within the first hour or two of waking, a cascade of biological signals is activated. Cortisol rises appropriately to support energy. Dopamine is released to boost mood and motivation. And melatonin production is suppressed until it's needed later, that night. Light isn't just a passive environmental factor. It's a master regulator of your biological state. If you wake up and immediately subject your eyes to artificial indoor light or phone screens without ever going outside, you confuse your internal clock. The body doesn't know when to be alert and when to wind down. The result is brain fog, irritability, low drive, and disrupted sleep later on. Over time, this misalignment erodes your resilience. It's not about willpower. It's about working with biology. In the evening, the reverse is true. Ledger true. Exposure to bright lights late at night, especially from screens, suppresses melatonin and pushes your sleep onset time later. This disrupts the architecture of your sleep and reduces its restorative quality. To cultivate true mental fortitude, you must protect your wind-down routine. Dim the lights, reduce stimulation, and allow your nervous system to shift gears. The sleep that follows will be deeper, more effective, and more likely to enhance the learning and discipline you cultivated during the day. There is no high performance without high-quality sleep. There is no resilience without circadian alignment. You don't need more hours. You need consistency, light exposure at the right time, and a commitment to protecting your restoration window. This is how you build a brain and a mind that can show up fully, not once, but over and over with clarity, purpose, and strength. Mental fortitude isn't forged only in hard moments. It is built quietly, daily, in the way you sleep and the light you let in. Purpose is not just an abstract concept or a motivational slogan. It is a biological anchor for the human mind. It gives your nervous system a target to organize around, a reason to regulate emotion, and a framework to interpret challenge. When you have a clear sense of purpose, your brain operates differently. Decision-making becomes more efficient, focus becomes more sustained, and the noise of distraction loses its grip. In the absence of purpose, the mind drifts. It becomes reactive instead of intentional, scattered instead of centered. But when you live with purpose, even the most intense adversity can be integrated and used for growth. Neurologically, purpose engages key regions in the brain associated with long-term planning Impulse control and motivation, the prefrontal cortex in particular, thrives when there's a meaningful goal to serve. When your actions align with a larger mission, your brain interprets stress and difficulty through a different lens. Instead of being threats, they become signals that you are stretching towards something that matters. This shift in interpretation changes the neurochemical response. Dopamine is released not just when you're rewarded, but as you move toward the goal. Purpose doesn't remove hardship. It transforms how your mind relates to it. Purpose also regulates the emotional brain. The amygdala, which plays a key role in detecting danger and generating fear responses, is less reactive in people who operate with a clear sense of meaning. This doesn't mean they feel less. It means they are less likely to be overwhelmed by transient emotions. So they can observe fear without being ruled by it. They can feel pain and still move forward. Purpose, in this way, acts like a gyroscope, keeping the mind steady in turbulent conditions. It is not a shield from suffering, but it gives suffering context. And that context is what allows you to endure without breaking. On a physiological level, purpose affects resilience. People with strong purpose have been shown to recover more quickly from stress, to have lower levels of cortisol, and to maintain healthier biological rhythms. This isn't some mystical benefit. It's how the body responds when the mind knows why it's enduring. When the brain perceives effort as meaningful, it recruits more resources, endures longer, and adapts faster. Purpose signals to the entire system. This is worth it. But purpose isn't something you stumble into by accident. It must be clarified, cultivated, and committed to. It requires deep introspection, asking hard questions about who you are, what you value, and what you're willing to struggle for. Purpose doesn't always feel good in the moment. In fact, it often demands sacrifice, but that sacrifice becomes fuel when it's linked to a mission greater than comfort. Without purpose, discipline feels like punishment. With purpose, discipline becomes devotion. Purpose also acts as a filter. In a world flooded with choices, distractions, and competing demands, the mind can easily become overstimulated and fragmented. But when you operate with purpose, you begin to say no more easily. You know what aligns and what doesn't. Your energy is conserved for what truly matters. Is conserved for what truly matters. This conservation of focus is critical, not just for performance, but for peace. The mind anchored in purpose is less likely to spiral into doubt or comparison. It has a reference point that orients thought, emotion, and action. Over time, living with purpose rewires your brain. The pathways of procrastination weaken. The reflex to avoid discomfort diminishes. You become more willing to take risks, endure discomfort, and invest in delayed gratification. And all of this becomes self-reinforcing. The more you live in alignment with purpose, the stronger your sense of identity becomes. The mind stops questioning whether it's capable and starts acting like it knows it is. In the end, purpose is not a luxury. It is a necessity for mental clarity, emotional stability, and sustained drive. It doesn't eliminate pain, but it gives pain meaning. And when pain has meaning, it becomes part of the path, not a barrier to it. Purpose doesn't just direct the mind, it fortifies. When your life is anchored in purpose, discomfort becomes training, obstacles become teachers, and fear becomes fuel. You stop drifting and start directing. The mind, once chaotic and reactive, becomes focused, deliberate, and unshakable. Purpose is not something you wait to find. It's something you choose to embody. And when you do, your thoughts align, your habits sharpen, and your will becomes immovable. Let your purpose be louder than your excuses. Let it speak louder than fear. Train your mind to serve that purpose, and you won't just survive challenges. You'll rise through them, forged, focused, and unstoppable.